I've been on a journey for health, for physical health and well-being, for mental health and well-being, and for spiritual health and well-being. And I guess what I've realized is that kind of across these boards in different disciplines, I've noticed common themes. I've noticed what I would say in general is moving away from an idea of the soul as something sort of detached and away from the body, and away from an understanding of the world as something mechanical. So I think a lot of us are trapped in this idea that I'm not my body, and that my brain controls my body, and then my soul controls my brain. So I'm sort of this spiritual thing that's distant from this physical thing. Mm-hmm. And this physical thing is like a really complex robot, or in the self-help world, you'll even hear terms like meat suit.
Right.
And when they want to be positive about the body, they'll give it a fancy adjective, like this wonderful meat suit or this magnificent machine. But the body's not a meat suit or a machine. And when we come to understand what the body really is, and what the mind really is, and what the soul really is, I am my body, and my body, and my brain, and my soul, and my mind are all intimately connected in a way that they can't be separated. Mm-hmm. And so, simple ideas that I've learned in trying to be healthier physically, I've realized correlate to a lot of these spiritual and theological concepts. An example would be, the recent discovery, I think just in the last 10 or 15 years, of epigenetics.
Wait, what is epigenetics?
So epigenetics.
You were waiting for me to ask, weren't you?
Yeah. So historically, we thought of our physical selves as determined by nature and nurture. Mm-hmm. So your nature is what you get from your parents, your genes, and then nurture is all the things that have been done to you and what you've done to yourself. So I'm just this combination of the genes that have sort of set my life in motion, and then all of the collection of things that I've done and that have been done to me. Mm-hmm. But what we've discovered is there's another layer in between, and this is epigenetics. So there's a layer that controls which ones of your genes are expressed.
Oh, interesting.
So the behavior, what I'm doing today, are basically flipping switches, and that controls the way that my genes are expressed. So that could control, maybe things like mental illness. It could control things like my physical well-being. It could control the way, how much energy I have. And it could even control things like addiction. It could control depression. So this idea that our cells actually have memory, so to speak. So on a cellular level, my body retains my behavior. So what I'm doing is actually really important. It's not that what's really important is, that I pray and I go to church and I do all these spiritual things, which are great, but then I can just go off and not take care of myself, right? I can eat whatever I want and sleep however I want and do whatever I want. And none of that matters for my spiritual life. But this is all intimately connected, because like I said, my soul isn't separate from my body, distant, just like in relationship with my brain, but my whole body and my whole soul are connected. So everything I do as a person, physically, mentally, and spiritually, affects everything else about me.
Interesting.
I love that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you.
No,
I insist.
Okay. So what would be like a moment in your life where a gene would be triggered? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you could be going along great, and then suddenly something triggers a gene to flip. Is that what I'm gathering?
Trauma, right? Trauma would be...
Yeah.
Even a simple thing like having a kid. I feel like something
that can be traumatic, I imagine.
That's true.
Sure. Yeah. Everything affects it. And this is all changing, I think, a lot more frequently. I think we like answers that I do this and I accomplish it and then I'm done with it. Mm-hmm. So like I can do these things and flip these switches and then I'm just fixed. And that's not how it works. Like what I'm doing now is affecting all of these epigenetic expressions. And then what I'm doing tomorrow, I could just flip them all back.
Oh, geez.
So like one example is some research that I've seen suggests that like exercising regularly for 6 months could flip all of the epigenetic expressions that would contribute to addiction.
Like off.
Oh,
nice.
So not saying that now you're no longer an addict, because obviously there's behavioral problems, there's a spiritual issue there, there's all kinds of other things that relate to this, but there are things we can do physically that make a difference.